Hello, hello, hello. Today, I'm going to be looking at Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, which I believe is the first book in a series of books. I believe the second book is out at the time of this recording. I've tried. This is my PSA announcement. I've tried very hard this year, especially to branch out the writers that I am reading. I think it's very important as a writer myself and as a lover of the fantasy genre that I explore a lot of these other writers because unfortunately the fantasy genre is still a little bit white male dominant. Now, with that being said, there are some very great writers who are white men that I probably have not read yet, but I like to explore people from other backgrounds other than my own, because a lot of times they have, there are things that we can learn just by examining the writing and taking a look and learning, basically wearing someone else's shoes and getting that perspective. And I think that's hugely important, especially if you're interested in being a writer, especially if you're interested in being a good writer, because you can't tell a multi-perspective story with really deep characters without living, through other people's, being able to empathize and live through other people's shoes. So, with that being said, this book is a fantasy that deals with the magic system. Is, I would say, the primary focal point of the story. It is about a young girl named Zaylee and her journey to restore magic to the world and to her people. Because it's been gone for, I think, about 10 years-ish. The magic is, which I really liked and appreciated. In the beginning, it's run by different gods, and these gods have different powers. So there's like shadow, fire, different elements. I really enjoyed it. I thought that aspect was really cool. I haven't seen it done yet. I've seen a lot of magic systems. I've seen magic systems with gods. I liked this. It was interesting, and it was fascinating. It was definitely a good time. I'm gonna try to go into no spoilers in this. I try to do that with my first reviews of a book series, because I want to let people get into the book series, see if they like it or not, and then I will, in future videos, I try to go a little bit more into spoilers so that I can do some really deep analysis. And it's hard to do super deep analysis without spoiling stuff. But with this book, let's go into the positives first. I thought Zaylee was a pretty compelling character. The tragedy she suffers throughout the book was with the past and the magic and stuff like that is interesting, because she is this magical, has the potential for this magical capacity. She is essentially persecuted and treated kind of like trash, almost just like this extreme level of disrespect, and without the power that they had, all of her people, all the magi, are kind of treated this way, and a lot of times made into slaves and stuff like that to serve whoever they want. They're basically the oppressed of this kingdom that exists, and not everyone who joins her team is a magi. Her brother Zane is just someone who's had to deal with the consequences of these events as well around him, and obviously his love for his sister, and seeing the effects that is placed on these people doesn't necessarily escape members of the family too. Like, because of Zaylee, both Zane and their father also receive harsh treatment. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. I thought that was interesting. I thought the relationship between Zane and Zaylee was interesting. I said I like the magic system. I like the development of a lot of the like quest items that they pick up throughout the entirety of the story. I don't want to go in too much into that because it's a little bit spoilery, but those were like my bright points of the book. I'm going to go into some critiques. My biggest thing for this is it felt very tropey. Even it was just, and I've just seen this story done a million times, and that's just because I read so much of it. But there is this element of the quest, and that's a super common trope in fantasy. It's done in a bunch of different ways, but in this it's done in a way that's like we go from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E to point F. And I think you can still do that well, but my biggest concern with it here was that it felt like the events from previous locations, instead of compounding into this compelling end piece, it kind of left me feeling like they don't matter, that these things only happen to drive the plot forward. And that is okay. I'm pretty sure this is her first book, and I want everyone to keep that in mind, because first books are often generally they're the hardest book to write, and you learn so much while writing a full novel that each consecutive book you write, generally, if you're open to feedback and criticism, leads you to write even better stories into the future. And that's how we get some, great writers. And that's true for every writer that I talk about on this channel. Jordan is no exception to that. Sanderson is no exception to that. If you go back and you look at their first books, they're definitely weaker than their books that they've released later in their career. So I'm interested to see where that progresses. But I think that this book could have really solidified more for me and really driven home some of these topics if it would have been a bit more of a buildup of tension rather than this like event, like almost these mini books essentially within. And I found myself getting a little bored a little past the midpoint, because I knew how it plays out. I'm thinking of like I haven't reviewed Aragon on this channel yet, but that's the one that I didn't read that when I was a kid. I read that when I was much older just to get a perspective on it. And I found that happening too, of like this like point A to point B to point C with no really like lasting consequences or actions. Yes, there you can point to a few things that come back up throughout the book, but I don't feel those things. I don't feel like those have impacts. They're just more stated rather than being shown through character growth and character development. And that might be part of it too, is like looking at making these character arcs a bit more deep and interesting. The characters themselves are interesting characters, but I don't feel like they really grow or change much throughout the entirety of the story. So that's my main critique of it. I actually did enjoy the ending sequence. There was some stuff in there that I was like, okay, but there's some really cool events in there. I think Amari's part was my favorite, and if you haven't read it yet, then you won't have any idea what I'm talking about. But I thought that her event, like Zaylee had a cool event too, but Amari was the one that I felt the most emotional impact for. And so that was the one that I was like the most drawn to. So the ending did leave me satisfied. With all that being said, with all the critiques being said and stuff like that, it doesn't mean I did not enjoy this book. I did enjoy this book. It's definitely not on a level of like some of the other books I've reviewed and talked about on this channel that I have proceeded to not read any more of the series, because I thought the first books were so egregiously bad that I could not bring myself to keep going, because with me, I listen to almost everything that I go through. And the way I can tell if I don't like a book is a 17-hour book. If I'm really enjoying it, I can get through in about 2 to 3 days. I can listen to something like 10 plus hours in one day. If I'm really not enjoying myself, it'll go to like an hour or two max. And even then, like, there are times where I have to commute to school and stuff like that, so I'll even skip those times listening in favor of just listening to music because I'm so bored by them. This is not the case for this one. I did get through this pretty quick. It took me about 5 days maybe. There's some good stuff. There's definitely some stuff that can be improved. I probably won't pick up the second book right away, but I do intend to read the second book at some point in the future. I think part of it too was that this book was really hyped up for me, and so I was left feeling a little disappointed. So I didn't record this like right after I finished. I waited a little bit to kind of like let that settle down. And I'm happy I did, because I think I'm a little bit more objective now, and I really do think that this book series has potential as long as the books continue to improve. And again, I hope for a long career for Tomi, so that we can see how her writing grows. And, maybe this series is, B. Maybe her next series is an A. Maybe the series after that is an S series, So I try not to judge based on the first book. I want to see the course of their career and see how that goes, because I'm excited. I'm excited to see more from her, and I'm happy I read this. So, if you have read this book, go ahead and post comments down below. If you disagree with me and you think this is a book without flaw, well, then I think you're not being objective. But you can go ahead and post that down in the comment below. Same way if you think the other way. Every book has great things about it. Every book has bad things about it. That's just the nature of writing. We're all human. We can't write a perfect book. But I'm excited to talk about this. I want to hear from people, and I want to know what others think about this. And maybe some other people had like agree or disagree with certain parts that I think. But I think that's it. So thanks for watching.